Welcome to Minerva, a show where we discuss the mysteries. We hope to give you enough information that you can go away and do your own study. Today I would like to introduce my co-host Duncan.
Hello.
And we're going to be discussing the Hellfireclub. The Hellfireclub has been known about for a very long time, but is essentially a secret society. It was first invented by the Duke of Wanton, and he later went on to be the Grand Master of Freemasonry, which is something we'll get onto in a moment. But very interesting beginnings. And the club was set up, in a sense, to mock religion and mock religious ceremonies and to have mixed company because it admitted men and women. We later on saw Sir Francis Dashwood continue the club, and well, he started his own order really, which was the Order of the Knights of St Francis, and it had lots of different names, but essentially they settled on the Hellfire Club. And one of the Hellfire Clubs, because there seemed to be many dotted around England, Ireland, etc. One of the interesting things about the Dashwood Club as well was that the motto was "Do what thou wilt." Yeah. Which again plays into esoteric teachings that we've heard before from Aleister Crowley. So there seems to be some crossover with this club, and it seems it's relatively old and it's got some really interesting beginnings. So what are your initial thoughts on?
Mine, I see it far more from a political perspective than I do follow your the esoteric side.
Yeah.
Although, to say that it was there to mock religion, I don't think is actually specifically true. I don't see it in that way. Yes, they did they did take the mickey out of religion, which I suppose you could say that is mocking religion. But to me, it was a case of like taking that phrase, "Do what thou wilt." So it was more of the libertine-like ideal. And at the time when the first Hellfire came out, London was awash with clubs, gentlemen clubs.
Yes, it was.
And so you had clubs for classical teaching of geometry or study of natural sciences. But the whole ethos was about morality. And every gentleman, to be a gentleman, was meant to be moral.
Yeah.
But that's what they were meant to be. Very few actually were. And so there was a hypocrisy that lived within society. And you had people who were moralists in the sense of this is what you should do, and you had other people saying, yeah, that's what we do, but that's what we don't do. And I think the first one, the Duke of Wharton's one, was very much the case of it's like a rebellion that you have in a university where that's what society expects. Let's not just follow society. Let's not pretend not to follow it. Let's blatantly not follow it. And that's where I see it from. And I see Dashwood's one to be an extension of that same thing. So the motto I see is more libertine than I do Aleister Crowley's.
Yeah, the more you research this, the more you feel there is this thread of rebellion and this kind of rebels who are doing things that they shouldn't be doing. Essentially, it's very debaucherous, and there's lots of tales of things that went on, which just were things that definitely should be happening behind closed doors. And on that subject, so what do you think it was? I mean, in regards to, we often talk about, when we talk about these subjects, secret societies and clubs that are meeting for ritual purposes because they have either a joint belief or they want to perpetuate a ritual and continue it. With this, there feels like, to me, that they were doing some ritual elements. And I certainly like the idea that they were the first people to, from a secret society point of view, in that era of England, to bring women into the fold.
I can understand that. I can understand the passion of wanting to look at it that way, but I see a big difference between Wharton's Hellfire Club and that of Dashwood's.
Yes.
Wharton's one, I'm sorry, even though I think the very nature of involving women was, again, just, fingers up to society.
Yeah.
It was, I think the rebellion was respectful in the sense of, you'll say you follow morality as a culture, but you don't follow morality. So don't tell us as youthful lords and things, we were not going to follow it and hide that we're not following it. We're going to be blatant and not follow it, including the use of women. Dashwood's, I take differently. Dashwood's, I think the essence was the same of rebellion, but I could concede that the structure of ritual was far more evident in that, possibly to increase personal debauchery or maybe a belief in the balance of sacred feminine and masculine and that aspect. To what degree, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, in Dashwood's club, they seem to, from all the records that we can find and the pieces that you hear, is that they would meet, they would have a big banquet type thing, and it would often just end in orgies, opium smoking, lots of drinking, and these parties would go on for days. It wasn't a quick couple of hours and then pop home. They really did go, and it happened for a long time. So it was very well set up, I believe. And kind of to carry on with that point is that Benjamin Franklin visited. Apparently, yeah. So it must have been well known in certain circles.
But I think that's where you've nailed it. It is that concept of certain circles. We know within Freemasonry that people join not because of what the society is or what it projects, but because there's a certain feeling that if you're in Freemasonry and you're of a certain echelon of society, or you're respected at that point. At this time when this was happening, Freemasonry was very much seen as that. To be a Mason was to be marked as being seen as being a moral person, whether you were or not. It was like almost like getting a public badge for doing it.
Yeah.
And so in the same way, I can understand that if someone was, and like Benjamin Franklin, who wrote some incredible things on the rights and balances, and he seemed to at least be astute enough aware of where people should be in society. I can imagine during his visits to the UK, to London, being involved with that group of people and to go and witness it. Let me witness it for myself. I don't think I'm sorry, certain visions you don't want to see, and I don't want to imagine Benjamin Franklin in a physical orgy in any way or form.
One of the places that's really famous for the Hellfire Club is West Wycombe. There's a cave that was made there, supposedly intended purposefully for these ceremonies. Having been, it's incredible. It's really quite deep. You know, it probably takes you 10, maybe 15 minutes to walk to the bottom, and as you go through, there are lots of different chambers and lots of different places to see, which are very interesting, including the River Styx at the bottom, and then right at the bottom, a chamber, which looks to me like a temple. It has Venus in it, that was worshipped in some way. And I do wonder if there was, for me, maybe an inner and an outer order. Maybe there was the party guys who would turn up and join the party and get involved in the drinking and the drugs and etc., etc. And then maybe there was a slightly more serious aspect to some of the inner core who were really trying to do some type of worship.
Yeah, they're all possible. I think actually, conscious of my normal turn of phrase, more likely probable. But to what effect would be the question part, because you would still have the group of people trying to break that moral code.
Yeah.
And it's like you can get through the first stage of breaking it, the sense of, right, you're just going to be to this club. You're not automatically expecting them to go into an orgy.
No, of course.
And so to create an inner circle to say, right, you know, let's give it some meaning, could also be another reason to actually create that the orgy. But even then, that concept, because what became a vehicle for debauchery, may have then, because it goes on to the next generation, then becomes a ritual. In the sense of, no, we actually really do this for Venus.
Yeah.
But it is an incredible place to go to. And
it is. The sad thing for me, actually, is that they've attributed lots of ghost and ghoul stories to it. And that always spoils it for me, because I really don't see that there. I do see it for what it is, because it almost feels purpose-built. So if you do get a chance to go along, it's a fantastic place to go and spend an afternoon and have a look around. And there's some really interesting things. It's sort of carved into a hilltop, and there's some interesting things on top, because there's a church on top of that, you see.
I know. Which, of course, it gives that lovely concept of heaven and hell.
Yeah,
and the concept,
as above, so below.
There is so much to read into, and that's why I quite agree. It's disappointing to see the location trying to diversify it to make it interesting, because there's enough of fascination, even to imagine, like as you go into a castle or a church, and you seem to instantly go, oh, how many people have walked this way, and what do they do? You go to those caves, and what do people do when they're walking through these caves? There's enough fascination for there, let alone putting any other supernatural aspect in.
Yeah, and I mean, just throwing it out there, do you think this club still exists, or do you think it's been wiped off the face?
Do you know, I think it still exists, actually, because out of anything, the Hellfire Club, because I think Dashwood's during its time was never actually called the Hellfire Club. I think it was outside. It was an outside group that called it that because of the setup, and it was seen such an apt phrase for it.
Yeah.
And so, because of that, the Hellfire Club as a term is a thing that survives. Yeah. And whether you take it as being the spiritual side, or like in an esoteric way, or my way, which says it's purely libertine, I think it exists in both. So I think, especially, I mean, isn't there still quite strong links with, apologies for the Irish, but the Irish universities still maintaining that concept of Hellfire clubs?
Yeah, you do hear that. Yeah, and I think that Irish link's quite interesting as well, because there was a contingent or an Irish branch of the Hellfire clubs that we're aware of, and I think the place still exists that it took place. So looking at it, there seems to have been them dotted around, and I just love the idea that there's still one going and there's somebody out there still continuing this this club. Really, I think it would be.
I'd be interested in sense, because to my understanding, there's been no actual written expression of the rituals.
No,
not one.
No.
But it seems, but again, looking at the Dashwood one, where you had the location, it seems virtually impossible to think that no structured ritual went on there.
No, and I think there must have been, even just down to the dress code, and there must have been some kind of rules and regulations, although...
Or even just structure of the evening. Yeah, of course. This is what we was expected.
Yeah, so it would be fantastic to hear some more about that. And if anybody has any information, always bring it forward, because we would love to know some more. So thank you very much for watching. Please like and comment. We'd love to hear what you think about the Hellfire clubs. And we'll see you again very soon.
Yeah.